What you are about to listen to is the inebriated ramblings of a moron. It is rife with inaccuracies, contradictions, pointless anecdotes, and heaps of what most would simply call bullshit. It is important to keep in mind that the following is merely a collection of thoughts from a man who often forgets how to think, drawing from fuzzy memories of the professional wrestling he watched in his youth, and should in no way be taken seriously by anyone, ever.
All right, part 4 of the Wrestling Gimmicks tier list. I don't want to make this intro too long, guys. If you're not familiar with this series, you know, as I just stated, it's part 4. I'm going to put the link in the description of the previous videos in the series. Or in fact, you know what? I'm just going to create a playlist, and I'll put that link in the description so you can follow along with us, okay? Because every time I do one of these, I don't want to have to go through the same fucking 10-minute diatribe of, here's the criteria, here's this, here's that. Look, we're talking about wrestling gimmicks, all right? It's a tier list, goes from the top to the bottom, right? I'm sure that most of you can discern between, like, Apex and Ass Blast, what means what. So, without going on and on and on, let's just get right to it, okay? We've gone through a lot of big names already. But, look, man, this is an industry that's been going on for fucking decades. So, I think we're going to be good for a little while here. Yeah, eventually I'm going to run out of shit to talk about. I'm going to run this dry at some point. But we're not there yet. I'm still having fun with it. Hopefully you are too. So let's get to it. Starting things off today, Johnny B. Bad. Mark Merrill. Okay. Well, Mark Merrill has had a few different gimmicks over the years as far as I'm aware. But Johnny B. Bad is one of the more popular. Well, popular is a relative term. I don't know. It's the one, when I think of Mark Merrill, that's the one that comes to mind. And I don't remember, was that WCW or WWF? I can't quite remember. Again, well, not again. If you watched the previous videos, you know that, like, I don't fucking take a lot of time to I don't take this very seriously, okay? I'm drawing on information that has existed in my brain from the time of my childhood back in, like, you know, the mid-'80s to fucking mid-'90s. So I'm going to get a lot of stuff wrong here. You know, forgive me, you know, if I'm talking about Johnny B. Bad and I'm saying, oh, yeah, he was a character in WCW. All right, maybe he was in WWF. I don't remember. In either case, he's not really worth remembering it. He's not really worth thinking about it all that much because that character fucking sucked. All right, it's a Little Richard on steroids. And in fact, honestly, I think Little Richard was more of a fucking man's man than Johnny B. Bad. The guy fucking, he looked like my fucking, well, I don't want to disparage my grandma, but he reminded me of my grandma. Like, with the fucking loud-ass pink lipstick and stupid eyeshadow. You know, he looked like a bitch. Okay, he looked like an old bitch. And what did he do? Did he win any titles? I'm sure he beat some jobbers. Mark Merrill's kind of renowned. You know, I mean, I'm sure if would I say all this shit in front of the dude if he were standing next to me right now? Probably not. I mean, the guy was a fucking Golden Gloves boxer. He kicked my ass. But I'm nobody. Who gives a fuck? Johnny B. Bad was a shit heel gimmick. That was, I don't want to waste a lot of time on it. That's, the problem is, as we go episode to episode, right? Because now we're on episode number 4. So now I have a lot to, like, draw back at, right? Like, I think about where I ranked guys like Max Moon, where I ranked guys like the Shockmaster, or where I ranked guys like Bret Hart, for that matter, right? Like, and so now I kind of have this, like, it's all kind of calibrated, right? You know, I have this, like, framework set up. Where does Johnny B. Bad fit into that? Well, I don't know if I would I don't know. I'm thinking out loud now. Would I put Johnny B. Bad on the same tier as Sparky Plug, Max Moon, the Red Rooster, and these sorts? Or would he go a notch above? Again, you know, I've said it in every entry that I've done up to this point. In-ring ability, like your skills as a worker, play a minimal role at best. Okay, so I don't give a fuck how good the guy was. I don't give a fuck about his Golden Glove boxing days. What was that gimmick? I'm Little Richard, but I look gayer than Little Richard. Ass blast. Oh, fuck. Yeah, ass blast. Johnny B. Bad goes in ass blast. Next up, Scott Hall. Now, we talked about Razor Ramon. In the first entry into this series, we ranked Razor Ramon, and Razor made his way up into Apex. Now, granted, Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, same fucking guy. Obviously, everyone knows that. If you clicked on this video, I assume that you know enough about wrestling to know that Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, same fucking guy. Different gimmick, though, right? Like, yes, very similar attire. You know, Scott Hall obviously being part of the NWO. Post Razor Ramon, you know, not the colors weren't as flashy. You know, he didn't talk with that fake Cuban accent, but it was still more or less. You know, I mean, it showed me that, you know, Razor Ramon was kind of, it was an extension of Scott Hall's own personality, kind of combined with, you know, Al Pacino's Scarface. Okay, honestly, the shame of it is, I preferred Scott Hall when he was being himself. As sad as that is, you know, as ugly as that kind of turned out to be, you know, when we go through his entire career and when we go through his entire life, the addiction issues that he had, whatnot. And of course, yes, he definitely lost a step or two post-Razor. You know, at that time in his career, shortly after he and Nash had kind of infiltrated the WCW, Scott Hall was great for a little while, but, you know, it didn't take too long for him to kind of fall, you know, succumb to his demons and whatnot, right? But nevertheless, this is a legend of the sport. And, you know, I touched on it in previous entries where, you know, how much was this dude responsible for? Not only was he the guy, you know, it was him and Nash, but Scott Hall was the first guy to appear. So that's got to count for something, right? On WCW, Monday Nitro, we're taking over, yada, 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 right? Like, he was the first, you know, obviously Hogan had made his way over to WCW. Macho Man had made his way over. But it was very clear when Scott Hall showed up in his, like, you know, denim vest and, you know, blue jeans and, you know, shit kicker boots, that, yeah, we're coming over here and we're taking over, fuck you. You know, it was a different attitude. It was a different, there was something new happening, right? And Scott Hall, I gotta say, he was a spearhead of that, right? And when you add to that he's the guy that came up with the crow gimmick for Sting, you know, he had so much influence on the business. Such a great worker, such a great fucking talker, I mean, the guy was just Apex. I mean, he's got to go to Apex. Where the fuck else am I going to put Scott Hall? You know, I mean, yes, it's a shame that he declined as much as he did over the years. And I guess if I have to sit back and think about it, like, I'm judging that character. We were talking about gimmicks, right? And so the gimmick of Scott Hall being himself. You know, we saw the WCW take some liberties with that, right? When it was Last Call, Scott Hall, they, you know, kind of, they parlayed his actual substance abuse issues into that gimmick, where he's like throwing up all over himself and having these fucking problems, and that was in poor taste. So that's the only thing that I would say might knock him down a peg or two, might knock him down a rung, keep him out of Apex, right? But just like with Shawn Michaels, you know, I have a bias against Shawn Michaels. And yes, I know, before anybody comments, I know Shawn and Paul, Triple H, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, they're all, the clique is this crew, they were all buddies. And, oh, you like Scott Hall, you like Kevin Nash, why don't you like Shawn Michaels? I don't like Shawn Michaels, okay? I don't need to fucking explain it. And so, yes, I have biases. There are some guys I just fucking don't like, and yeah, it might get in the way of me being objective and placing the guy in the right spot. So be it, okay? This is, the whole thing is about my fucking, you clicked on the video to watch fucking my opinion on some stupid tier list that means nothing. There's no real such thing as an objective take, but if you're looking for something close to that, then look to WrestleLamia, look to fucking some other, insider or whatever. This is just one asshole's opinion. Just as I kind of let my bias get in the way of Shawn Michaels, I'm going to do the same thing here with Scott Hall. I'm going to put him in Apex regardless. I don't give a fuck what kind of problems this dude had later in life. I don't care. Well, I mean, I do care because it's sad. I hate the fact that the guy had to go through, battle through all the demons that he did and ultimately wind up dying, way younger than he should have. It's a tragedy. So I want to make it known that, I don't take any of that lightly. The last call, Scott Hall, yes, it was in poor taste and whatnot, but Scott is, again, I mentioned it in the first video that I did, he's in my top 3. It may be my top 1. He might be my favorite of all time. But anyway, I don't want to go on all day long about Scott Hall. He goes into Apex. Next up, the Steiner Brothers. Another one that I mentioned in the first video that I did was Scott Steiner. But it's a big Papa Pump gimmick. And I think I put him in Badass, right? I don't think Scott Steiner, I don't think Big Papa Pump really belongs on the same tier as a Stone Cold Steve Austin, as a Hulk Hogan. But the Steiner Brothers, that's a whole different conversation because, when they were a tag team together and that career lasted a while before... the advent of Big Papa Pump, right? That was one of the fucking best tag teams of all time, right? I mean, who are some of the most legendary tag teams that you can think of? And tell me the Steiner Brothers aren't on that list. Right? The Dog-Faced Gremlin, Rick Steiner, Scotty Steiner. And as I kind of mentioned when I was talking about Big Papa Pump, his physique, increased. It's like the dude was on Venom or something, and he talked a lot more shit. But, his in-ring work definitely suffered, right? Gone was the days of the Frankensteiner. A lot of the more athletic moves that he was certainly capable of back in his youth, they kind of went by the wayside once Big Papa Pump came into the picture. But when we're talking about the Steiner Brothers, and you look at all their work in the WCW, the WWE, the fucking New Japan, everywhere they fucking competed, everywhere they performed, they're fucking top notch, man. And the contrast between the two brothers, Scotty obviously being the more athletic of the two, but Rick had that certain look, the certain aggressive, the Steiner line and all that, the more, kind of a brawler, right, where Scott was more of the athlete. Great dynamic, great fucking tag team. Fuck, man, and great contrast between the two, because so many of these other legendary tag teams, right, like Hawk and Animal, Axe and Smash, Shawn and Marty, Luke and Butch, they're like basically clones of each other, right? Where Scott and Rick were not very similar, right? Other than the fuck, they would color coordinate, with their fucking attire. But other than that, they were two very different fucking performers, two very different wrestlers, two very different athletes with, a chasm between the two of them in terms of their abilities. And that's not a knock on one guy or the other or whatever, but the Steiners, I'd say, the only other tag team that comes to mind immediately that kind of belongs in that same conversation is the Hart Foundation with Jim and Brett. Okay, so Steiners... Well, Big Papa Pump, in my opinion, doesn't really belong any higher than Badass. The Steiners, they got to go into Apex. And you know what? What the fuck happened here? I didn't put Scott there. All right, whatever. I fucked up. I didn't put Scott in Apex. Okay, so far we have the Steiner Brothers and Scott Hall in Apex, and we have Johnny B. Bad in the fucking ass blast. Let's move on. Ken Shamrock, the world's most dangerous man. Now, true MMA fans, or just MMA fans that exist today, that are aware of Ken Shamrock and his history. Well, we know in retrospect that, no, Tito Ortiz kicked the shit out of him like, I don't know how many fucking times, like, what, 3-4 times? He lost to Hoist Gracie. It's not like Ken Shamrock. And if we're talking about the world of MMA, if we're talking about the world of combat sports, like legit combat, Ken Shamrock, honestly, would I put him even in the top 10 of all time? As far as being a pioneer and a legend, yeah, maybe. But in terms of, is he actually the world's most dangerous man? Well, I'd say, we could rifle off names like Anderson Silva, Chuck Liddell, Brock Lesnar, Tito Ortiz, fucking John Jones, yada, 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 Khabib Nurmagomedov. We could go in terms of guys who are more dangerous than Ken Shamrock. But at the time, in the mid-90s, fuck, dude. I mean, again, the pioneer of that sport, king of pancrase, storied history in pro wrestling prior to his MMA debut. Fucking perfect. That fucking gimmick worked perfectly, and he had the fucking ability to back it up. Because granted, I threw a bunch of names out there and just kind of openly said, I don't think he's the most dangerous guy in the world. I mean, because there are guys by today's standards who are better. But at that time, you'd be hard-pressed to find a guy more dangerous than Ken Shamrock, or a guy that you could say would beat the shit out of Ken Shamrock, right? Maybe you could say Horace Gracie or Dan Severn or whatever. There might be a couple names you could pull out of your ass, and it might have validity to it back in, like, the mid-90s, but it would only be a few. And even that would be questionable. So, Ken Shamrock, I mean, he had the physique, he had the attitude, he was, as far as I can remember, decent enough on the mic to kind of pull that character off. Ken Shamrock absolutely deserves to go into badass. I mean, can I put him in Apex? No, of course I can't. Like, he's not, if you remove Ken Shamrock from the equation, if you removed him from history, would the pro wrestling industry look all that different? No, it wouldn't. But nevertheless, he's a badass. I mean, it's hard to fucking argue with that, right? Okay. That being said, let's move on. First female. This is the fourth entry, and finally I got some pussy into the mix. That was in poor taste, wasn't it? Whatever. Sher Martell. Scary Sherry. Sensational Sherry. She's the first woman that I decided to throw in here. Why did I pick her? I don't know. It was fucking just... She just popped into my mind, I think I was talking some shit about Shawn Michaels, and it's like, oh yeah, Sher Martell, whatever, fuck, I don't know. Prior to her, the females, yeah, I mean, Medusa, and there was plenty of female wrestlers in, like, Crockett Promotions and, like, some of the Southern Territories and that, but WWE, WWF, even WCW, it wasn't, like, a big feature of their promotion to like, include female wrestlers, right? When I was a kid, Miss Elizabeth, right? Macho Man's Miss Elizabeth was like the most famous valet, manager, whatever, female quote unquote performer, right? And she was certainly not a actual performer, right? She was, again, a manager, a valet, whatever you want to call it. Sher Martell, on the other hand, who, once things went south between Macho Man Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth, Sher Martell, Scary Sherry, Sensational Sherry, whatever, she shows up and now she's taking over. And, where, the pretty and dainty and quiet Miss Elizabeth, so prim and proper, and then you have this loudmouth bitch, with like the fucking wild makeup and fucking coked out hair. You know, voice that sounded like she smokes 10,000 cigarettes in a day. She shows up, right? And I remember as a kid thinking, ew, gross, she's ugly, I hate... And then, of course, you know, in my adolescence, I kind of forgotten about her because her fucking whole career, shit the bed, went by the wayside. And now, as I'm doing this research in my mid-40s or whatever, looking up shit, I'm looking at pictures of her to fucking put in this stupid video, and I'm like, man, I try to keep this family friendly, and I'd have put it this way. I'd have got some stank on my hang low from Sher Martell, and I'd have enjoyed it. Okay, she seemed like she'd have been wild, and she had some, you know, legit in-ring experience, which I honestly I don't fucking know fuck all about. You know, she was a good valet though, right? And she got involved. She would interfere with matches. I think fucking as far as those, you know, she helped pave the way alongside Elizabeth. And now, granted, Elizabeth was probably more of a iconic. Man, was she though? I don't know. Without the Macho Man, Elizabeth wouldn't have been shit. It was his fucking fiance, his girlfriend, his wife, whatever, and he kind of forced her into the business. And you could kind of always tell that Elizabeth was kind of, I don't know, it always felt like she was kind of uncomfortable. Like she didn't live and breathe the business, whereas Sher Martell certainly seemed to be an, you know, enthusiastic part of it, right? So as far as the females are concerned, right? I mean, when we're talking about people like Elizabeth or Sher Martell or Trish Stratus or Tori Wilson or Stacy Keibler or fucking whomever, Ronda Rousey, you can't really compare and contrast them to the men. They exist in a category all their own, but nonetheless, they are part of the business. And, I mean, they deserve to be included. So, Sher Martell, where does she fit into that fucking dynamic, right? Like, where does she belong in Apex? Does she belong in Badass, Loser, Ass Blast? I would say Sher Martell. Fuck. You know what? I gotta put her in Apex. You know, I mean, of course, she's not as synonymous with pro wrestling as Hulk Hogan or Stone Cold Steve Austin, but as far as the females go, people fucking still remember Sher Martell, right? Like, she was, I don't know. I don't know how much I can elaborate on. I can't, when I think about it, again, so, asterisk, caveat, whatever, you know, I'm old, okay? I don't fucking know. I know there's a lot more female superstars these days, right? Bianca Belair and Charlotte Flair and I don't care and whatever the fuck. Okay? I don't fucking follow this shit anymore. You know, when I stopped paying attention, it was Lita and Trish Stratus and Stacy Keibler were fucking last bitches that I was familiar with. Okay? And did any of them hold a candle to Sher Martell? Well, maybe in terms of looks or sex appeal, yeah. But in terms of what did they do for the business, how iconic were they? Nah, dog shit by contrast. So fucking Sher Martell is fucking Apex. Fuck you. Anyway, moving on. Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog. All right, so the British Bulldog. Now, the British Bulldog himself, he was part of a tag team with the Dynamite Kid, known as the British Bulldogs. And obviously, whatever the fuck happened with Dynamite Kid, happened with Dynamite Kid. And they fucking, you know, when I was a kid coming into this whole thing, that was a little before my time. And the British Bulldog, to me, it was just David Boy Smith, you know, whatever. And he'd come out with the Bulldog on a leash, God Save the Queen, whatever the fuck, Union Jack on his back, fucking braids and shit. He's like 5'10". No, dude, that guy was more like 5'6", I bet. You know, maybe in his boots he was like 5'9", but he's fucking wider than he was tall. Dude definitely looked like a power lifter. Dude definitely, I mean, and he proved it, right? Like, the power slam was his fucking, like, finisher. And it's a pretty generic move, but the way he was able to execute it so effortlessly, just hoisting guys up onto his shoulders, even guys like twice his own size, running across the ring with him. Yeah, man, British Bulldog was great. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, he was fucking great. You know, and then they kind of did a few things. You know, he had a fucking heel turn, and then they tried to just, like, reintroduce him as this, like, blue-collar guy wearing just, like, nothing but blue jeans and fucking, you know, work boots or whatever. And he seemed to slim down a little bit. Maybe the steroid scandal got the better of him, and he had to kind of get off the sauce. I don't know. He definitely wasn't, you know, once it came to, like, the latter half of the mid-90s, late 90s, he had kind of slipped away. But for his time, the British Bulldog, I mean, you know, outside of, you know, that reminds me, you know, in the last video I uploaded, I got a comment from someone talking about, hey, you know, I'm from Britain. It'd make me real happy if you included Davey Boy and maybe, like, you know, William Regal. You know, and William Regal, he's not going to be included in this video, but he definitely deserves a mention. And so I'll definitely put him into a future installment. For right now, I don't know that the United Kingdom had a better ambassador than the British Bulldog. You know, talking about that era of the, you know, very early 90s, you know, 91 to maybe 92 or so. Davey Boy Smith, that goes above a W. But it can't go in Apex. He's going to go to Badass. Right up there with fucking Ken Shamrock. Badass. All right. Next up. Sabas Simba. Sabas Simba, a.k.a. fucking Tony Atlas. Who, you know, if we're just talking about Tony Atlas, that's fucking at least, you know, it's minimum badass. But we're not talking about just Tony Atlas. We're talking about Sabas Simba. And as fucking far as I know, I learned from watching Saturday Morning Wrestling that, you know, when that guy debuted, Sabas Simba, I think it was Vince McMahon who told me this. It means 7 lions. Sabas Simba. And honestly, like, when the Lion King came out and it was, you know, fucking Mufasa and Simba, I was like, oh, Simba. Yeah, that means lion. How do I know that? Because Vince McMahon told me. Sabas Simba, 7 lions. Simba, lion. So that's fucking kind of fucked up my whole thing. You know, I think when did the Lion King come out? I don't know. Was I 11? Something. I was young enough to, like, still, like, want to watch that fucking movie. And I remember thinking, because of my knowledge of what Simba meant, and it just meant lion. What a shit fucking name. Right? Simba, one of the most, like, it was a fucking movie, is a fucking iconic Disney movie. Imagine Mickey Mouse. You know, everybody knows Mickey Mouse. What if it was just Mouse? Or Duck? Instead of, well, actually, that would be kind of, I think I'd like that better than Donald Duck if it was just Duck. But whatever. Simba is a fucking lion. His name is Lion. That's fucking dumb, and I know that because of Sabas Simba. And what the fuck am I talking about? Anyway, I thought we were talking about pro wrestling. Let's get back on track here. Sabas Simba. I fucking mentioned it in the last video or two. Every time the black guys come up, man, you know, I don't want to get into this racial shit. All right, I am the furthest thing from a fucking wokester. Believe you me, I don't give a fuck. Okay? But damn, man, when I look back at the fucking 80s and early 90s and all the black characters, Kamala, Sabas Simba, Junkyard Dog, Bad News Brown, fucking, oh my God. I don't think it was till fucking Ahmed Johnson come around until we got some fucking level of dignity, because what else are we talking about? Virgil? He'll be coming up later in the conversation. Find me a black guy from anywhere, right, in the early 80s to the fucking mid-90s that's, like, respectable. Prior to Ahmed Johnson. And Ahmed Johnson's a fucking asswipe. You know, personally, he's a shit fucking worker, and he's not well liked in the business, but at least his gimmick was just like, I don't fucking, you know, I'm a big, strong motherfucker. I don't give a fuck. Like, whatever. Like, it wasn't some goof. Anyway, Well, I guess I'm answering my own question, because Tony Atlas was respectable in his day prior to Sabas Simba. But Sabas Simba's fucking ass blast. Okay? That's fucking ass blast. What a fucking joke that was. Anyway, Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio Jr. All 5'2" of them. 130 pounds of them. I mean, they build him at like 5'8" and 200 pounds, but that's bullshit, dude. Look at this fucking guy. He was always, you know, I mean, the Big Show could throw him around like a basketball. And that was kind of part of his thing, right? He's fucking this little guy with like high acrobatic skill levels. A luchador. He had the fucking mask. You know, he kind of popularized that whole genre of wrestling here in the West, right? You know, when you think of luchadors, who do you think of before you think of Rey Mysterio Jr.? And there was nobody like him. Fucking, especially in the days of WCW. I remember, you know, when I was first starting to get on WCW, when they first started kind of winning the Monday Night Wars and stuff, and you had Ultimo Dragon, you had Rey Mysterio, you had one guy from Japan, you had one guy from Mexico. They're both fucking, you know, masked characters, high agility, undersized, but man, those were the two characters that kind of really introduced me, you know, to the, you know, non-Western forms of pro wrestling. Granted, the Great Muta kind of helped popularize Japanese pro wrestling before Ultimo Dragon, but even Muta, by contrast, as far as I'm aware, was a much bigger guy than, say, Ultimo Dragon. So, I mean, when it came to that high-flying, high-acrobatic guys that would make Shawn Michaels look like a fucking slob, right? Like a fucking slouch. Yeah, you had Rey Mysterio. Guys like that. And all the props in the world to him. Okay. Only place I feel where Rey Mysterio, as far as I'm aware, dropped the ball is when he allowed himself to be unmasked. That sucked. I don't remember if that took place in WWF or if it happened in WCW. I can't quite remember. Somewhere in the mid-90s. I remember I was at a fucking, you know, I used to work at a mall. I used to work at a fucking Pizza Hut in the mall, and there's a valet driver at the mall who was a shitheel, drug addict. But, you know, I was underage at the time, and he could get drugs and alcohol and all that, and he used to fucking say, hey, man, you want to come over and watch some pro wrestling? Let's fucking go, dude. I got fucking guys that got prison. We got the best drugs. We got the best booze. Come over. We're getting a pay-per-view. Yeah, so I had this fucking shitheel, quote-unquote, friend whose house I would go over and watch all the pay-per-views from about, I don't know, 1996 to 1998 or something like that. And I remember there was one big fat black dude that was just fresh out of prison named Ramon. And he drank like two liters of Faygo every one of these fucking pay-per-views we'd go to. This guy just had, like, I don't know how he didn't, I don't remember him ever getting up out of his seat to piss, because it was always a struggle for him to get up. So I remember it was like, it was an event. If this dude had to get up to piss, because he weighed about 750 fucking pounds, it was a thing where you had to fucking, oh, look out, Ramon's getting up, get out of his way, let him go to the bathroom. And I remember him taking down multiple 2 liters, never having to get up to piss, never having to get up to shit. And he would just laugh at everything because he was high all the time. And he was, again, when I say 750 pounds, I am not fucking exact. This dude was bigger than Yokozuna. His fucking laugh was hilarious, though. Like, he had the most high-pitched voice for a man that I've ever fucking heard. Which is like, it's like stark contrast to someone like myself, right? Who was like, at the time, maybe $130. I've always had kind of a deeper voice. This dude was a giant, and he looked like a bitch. I'll never forget that when they took Rey Mysterio's mask off. That's all I could hear was, he looked like a bitch. And he did look like a bitch. They should have never let him take that fucking mask off. It fucking ruined the whole thing. But whatever, they were smart and they decided to put... Wow, dude, I'm all over the place. Anyway, I already got derailed enough. Let's get back on track. Rey Mysterio's fucking apex. Apex. Fucking Rey Mysterio. All right, anyway, moving on. Speaking of 750-pound people, Yokozuna. Okay, now, Yokozuna... He was one of Undertaker's, well, they became best buds, right, over time. You know, if you listen to Mark Calloway talk, this dude, I feel bad because I can't remember his fucking name. He's a Hawaiian who they billed as Japanese. They built him as a sumo champion, but really he wasn't. He was fucking, I think he was born in Hawaii or Samoa or something. He's part of that whole fucking Samoan lineage. Right? Big, tough dude. Very agile for being as big and fat as he was. Undertaker absolutely fucking fell in love with the dude. Wanted him to be the guy. Rather than when they brought in Giant Gonzalez, it should have been Yoko, right? For the Undertaker to feud with. And that would have, I mean, let's be honest, it would have made for some much better match. It would have made for a much better WrestleMania had they brought in Yoko to feud with Undertaker rather than Gonzalez, but that's neither here nor there. That's not what happened. But Yoko made a path all his own. He created a legacy for himself. Fucking, I mean, what do you want, man? The guy was like fucking 600 plus pounds, wherever he was. Moved very well for a guy that size. But, when I was a kid, though, watching it, I didn't really appreciate that kind of stuff. Like, I didn't see it. Okay, I just saw the fattest fucking wrestler I'd ever seen. You could see this, there's a buddy of mine who had commented, we were at a gas station at one point in time, and there was a woman of, I don't know, maybe her late 40s, early 50s, standing in line in front of us, and her lower half looked real good. She was wearing yoga pants. And I'm thinking, damn, dude, because you could tell when you look at her face, her face looked like a fucking catcher's mitt that had been left out in the sun for about 6 months. But her lower half, in those yoga pants, they looked fucking A+. And I remember him telling me, hey, listen, dude, I know you might not get it, but yoga pants hide a lot, right? And as tight-fitting as they are, they hide a lot. There was no hiding shit with Yoko. That motherfucker was wearing spandex, and you could see the cellulite all over his fucking... He looked like shit. Could he move? Yeah, he could move. For being the size of a goddamn Ford F-150, he could move. But I just didn't appreciate it when I was younger. And supposedly he was a really good guy, real great worker, easy to work with. And yeah, I can go back now in hindsight, objectively, and see, yeah, the dude definitely had some real talent. And that's, whatever. We're in 2024 now. Here I am, looking back and trying to assess things. So I can't just draw from my, memory as a 14-year-old. I'm trying to objectively view this as a 44-year-old. Where am I putting Yokozuna? If I am going to be fair and objective, especially just to prove to some of you motherfuckers that I can be objective, right? Even though I didn't like him as a kid. There's nobody like him. There's nobody like him. And yeah, when I do look back and see that this dude was able to do what he did at his size, make that gimmick last as long as it did, and then by all accounts, you hear what a good guy he was. He's going to Apex. Yoko goes to Apex. All right. Speaking of big fat fucks, Bastion Booger. All right, we're not going to spend a lot of time on Bastion Booger. Bastion Booger was a big fat guy who was not as fucking renowned or athletic or cool or whatever. In no way, shape, or form was Bastion Booger anywhere near the same level as Yokozuna. But he had an equally terrible physique. And that was kind of the thing, right? That was, and like I mentioned in the last video, when you're talking about guys like Disco Inferno, yeah, it's on its face, it's a corny gimmick. It's very self-aware. And Bastion Booger, more or less the same. Bastion Booger was designed to be a fucking disgusting and shit-heel character. Did they pull it off? Was that game plan executed? Yeah, it was. So for that reason alone, I'm not going to put Bastion Booger into Ass Blast, because the intent was for it to be a shit gimmick. That was the whole point, okay? But it was a shit gimmick nonetheless. So, where does Bastion Booger go? And, his whole finishing, what it was, very similar, right? Like, Yokozuna did the bonsai drop, right? His giant fucking ass would cave your chest in. But Bastion Booger, slammed his fat taint into your fucking face, right? He literally gave you a face sit. And that was his, oh my God, I can't even begin to imagine about what that must have smelled like, what that must have felt like. Oh, cringeworthy, but that, again, that was the point. Bastion Booger, that's fucking L. I mean, it's supposed to be L, and it is L. So, whatever. Fuck it. Farooq. Now, Ron Simmons. Farooq. Guy has had a few different gimmicks over the years. You know, he started out with fucking Butch Reed in Doom. As far as I can recall, that was my introduction to him anyway. Fucking no-nonsense fucking tag team. Talk about black guys. You know, WCW, which that team was a part of at the time. There was no stupid gimmick. There was no, oh, you're a fucking, you know, some fucking weird witch doctor or some weird, you know, fucking African experiment or whatever. You're just some fucking badasses from wherever the fuck, you know, Baltimore or Chicago, wherever the fuck they were supposed to be from, right? Good deal, right? Ron Simmons. Now, when he first got introduced into the WWF as Farooq, he had a dumb gladiator gimmick, had that same kind of color scheme as like Max Moon, like the sky blue with the misshapen helmet. That was really fucking dumb. What we're talking about here today is Farooq as a leader of the Nation of Domination. You know, that Black Panthers type fucking party, right? Like that particular faction. He was the leader of the Nation, which included the likes of The Rock, Mustafa, D'Lo Brown, Mark Henry, I believe, at one time. You know, the black guys, you know, all the shit that I just fucking mentioned about, hey, motherfucker, you know, fucking Kamala, the Junkyard Dog, Coco Beware, enough of this bullshit. We're taking over. Fuck you, white boy. You know, like, that fucking worked. That was pretty fucking cool, right? Or at least, you know, fucking, it worked to me. That was sort of, in my eyes, a respectable gimmick for somebody like Ron Simmons to have. And, you know, Ron Simmons being one of the guys, you know, there are a handful of guys that we can talk about in the business that are guys that you just don't cross, right? Obviously, Haku, Tonga, whatever, being like chief among them. But, you know, there are also guys like Scott Steiner, Ron Simmons being one of them, right? That you just, they're kind of known as, you know, you don't want to fucking piss this dude off. And he wore that well, right? I think he carried that persona over to every gimmick that he played. So Farooq, Ron Simmons, as he existed in the Nation of Domination, that goes into badass. All right, next up, fucking Warlord. I forget the guy's name, as is very common. I'm sure you're all used to that by now, me forgetting guys' real names. He's still alive and he looks fucking great. I'll tell you what, if there was an award for guys who, you know, were fucking prominent back in the late 80s, early 90s when I was a kid, and still look fucking great, like unbelievably fucking youthful today, surprisingly, the Warlord is among them, dude. The guy, if you go ahead and go to YouTube, go to Google, whatever, look up a shoot interview with him. You know, I mean, granted, he doesn't look like he did back in 1991, but he don't look that much older than I do, and I know the guy's got to be at least 15, 20 years older than I am. He looks fucking great. Very, very happy. I think he's later in life, he became like a bodyguard for like 50 Cent or something like that. But I don't know. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, or corroborate that, or confirm it, whatever, in the comments below if you know better than me. But the Warlord was one of the scariest looking motherfuckers, right? Back in those days, you know, he had some feuds with the British Bulldog. Obviously, going back to the Powers of Pain with him and the Barbarian, they were kind of, you know, I don't want to say a lift or a rip-off of, you know, Legion of Doom or Road Warriors, but very similar, right? Two big, giant dudes with, like, face paint. But I gotta say, I think Barbarian and Warlord were both physically bigger and even scarier than Hawk and Animal, if I'm being honest. Fuck, man, what was the Warlord? What did he stand at? About 6'5", 6'6", at least? Had to weigh about 320, 330. Fucking one of the most powerful, solid looking dudes. You know, some guys, you know, I mean, you got guys like the Ultimate Warrior, right? Or Lex Luger, or you can tell they're like bodybuilder types, right? You can kind of, over time, if you watch shit like pro wrestling or bodybuilding or MMA or football or any of these fucking sports with these like big jack dudes, right? You can kind of get an idea for who's got the all go, no show or all show, no go physiques, right? The Warlord looked like fucking bolt, right? Like, I mean, the dude wasn't the most shredded dude, but you could tell the dude was shredded enough and looked like he could just rip the arms off a fucking gorilla and shove it up its own ass. That's how fucking strong he looked. I liked the fucking getup he had, you know, when he was with Slick for the time, post Powers of Pain. You know, that like Kano looking half metal mask and all that. I don't know about the W on the stat. I don't know what that was about. But fucking big, intimidating, scary looking dude. And I feel like he kind of paved the way. To me, I remember like when Goldberg first debuted, I remember, you know, some of my buddies and stuff who were just very, very, very casual fans of the pro wrestling world thought that it was the same dude, right? Oh, a big bald dude with a goatee and giant shoulders or whatever. Let's go. And I remember thinking, nah, he's not big enough, right? The Warlord was bigger than Goldberg, like, and scarier than Goldberg. Goldberg, obviously, seemed a little faster, more athletic, explosive and stuff, you know, and which makes sense. He was a former football player, but the Warlord just looked like a fucking, like if I had to put money on who's going to win, like if there's like, you got an oak tree stuck in the ground and you put like the Warlord and Bill Goldberg, each one of them in front of the same tree, you know, and who's going to rip that tree down faster, I'd say Warlord's going to win that. Anyway, on and on and on I could go, but let's just fucking cut it off right there. Badass. Fucking Warlord. Not Apex. Badass, though, right? And man, here we go again. We're filling out the top straight away. Only person toward the bottom is fucking Bastion Booger. Well, no. Fucking Johnny B. Bad and Sabas Simba. I forgot about them. Anyway, Carrie Von Erich, the Texas Tornado. Fucking legendary, man. The Von Erichs, fucking Zach Braff's got some stupid-ass movie coming out about the Von Erichs, and I don't think that they did. I saw the casting, and I don't know who the fuck they got playing Carrie, but it ain't right. For me, you know, obviously this is a fucking legendary family, second only maybe to the Hart family in the industry of pro wrestling. A lot of tragedy surrounding that family. You know, most of them are all gone. But the guy that I was most familiar with, because he came to prominence, you know, again, in that early 90s, you know, era, was Carrie, the Texas Tornado. He feuded with Mr. Perfect. He already had a few, wait, did he have, I really don't remember him feuding with anyone other than the Mr. Perfect. I mean, I know he did. I just can't remember any of them. That was kind of a standout feud for me. Anyway, and I remember going, I mentioned a couple videos back, you know, going to some of these events when I was a kid, going to some of these house shows, and I remember, you know, watching the match live when they had battled over the Intercontinental belt. And the match that I got to go see, obviously being a house show, the title's not going to change hands. Perfect got, you know, he got counted out of the ring. But you know, Carrie won that match and lifted the Intercontinental belt, you know, above his shoulders after Perfect ran away or whatever. Whatever. I don't want to get into too many anecdotes here. But great physique, great in-ring ability. He's all right on the mic. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't put him on the level of a Kurt Hennig. I wouldn't put him on the level of a Mr. Perfect in terms of, you know, tit for tat if we're talking about, like, mic abilities and everything else. But, dude definitely had a physique to rival anyone else at the time. Kind of very reminiscent of someone like Jim Hellwig, Ultimate Warrior. Maybe not quite as shredded, but damn close. Same frilly tassels on his boots and that. He had the tornado punch, which is, as far as a finishing move goes, that was kind of lame. But he had the claw. I don't know. Texas Tornado. Just because he's a Von Erich. I gotta put him in Badass. Damn, dude. Badass is just filling up again. We got just nothing but badasses in Apex. Fuck, what the fuck? Anyway, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Okay, now, Now we're going back to the fucking, mid 80s again. Maybe early 80s. I don't know. I don't remember watching a whole lot of matches with Ricky. Okay, the Ricky the Dragon Steamboat kind of goes into that same category for me as guys like Hillbilly Jim, Big John Studd, guys that, kind of rose to prominence before I really started paying attention. By the time I started paying attention to the business, by the time I became a fan of pro wrestling, a lot of these guys were kind of on their way out. Ricky Steamboat was no exception. But from what I recall, he was, a fair-sized guy. Agile. He had the cool entrance. I remember, the whole big, costume, the dragon get up, and he'd breathe fire. He'd stand on like the middle turnbuckle and do his fire breath and all that. I mean, how good was he? Rob Van Dam in terms of his agility and martial arts ability? Probably not, but he's also a little bit bigger than an RVD. He's fine. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, I mean, he's, just based on the time in which he came to prominence, you got to give him some respect. He was definitely unique, right? Compared to the Hulk Hogans, compared to the Macho Mans, the Giants, the Hillbilly Jims. I mean, who else at that time was like Ricky the Dragon Steamboat? Kind of relying on their martial arts, quote-unquote, skills and that, right? Well, son of a bitch, that's another badass. Not Apex, badass, though. I don't know, man. I mean, this is all top-heavy today. All right, let's see if we can do something about that. Here comes Virgil. Curly Bill. Virgil. We're not talking about Curly Bill. We're talking about Virgil, right? The $1 Million Man's servant. Butler, slave, whatever the fuck you want to call it, right? The $1 Million Man bitch, the $1 Million bitch. Finally at some point, like 1991, he'd had enough and smacked DiBiase upside the head with that $1 Million belt of his. And I remember, prior to that, prior to his, revolt, thinking, I mean, the dude, he didn't, $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, was definitely taller, and he had the bigger mouth, but there was always that black dude standing behind him with, the no sleeves, and he looked like he had some fucking guns on him. Definitely looked like the more shredded of the two, and I remember as a kid thinking, why didn't this guy just kick his ass? Why does he take this shit from fucking DiBiase? Right? Just fucking smack that dude, right? Tell him to fuck off. And eventually he did. And unfortunately, it didn't go too far for him. I don't know. He had some boxing moves. Yeah, he did. And, I remember rooting for him. I forget the guy's name in real life, but it ain't Virgil, because they love just taking a piss out of Dusty Rhodes, I guess. But that's Dusty Rhodes' real name, Virgil, and their use of Virgil as some fucking bitch to the $1 Million Man was supposed to be another dig at Virgil, just like the African Dream, Akeem, which again, I wasn't even aware of that until it was pointed out to me a couple videos back. But man, they must have just really fucking had it out for poor old Dusty. But anyway, this ain't about Dusty, it's about Virgil. I don't know, fucking Virgil. No. All right, finally, we're gonna go back to the bottom. Yeah, it's a nah. That's nah. I'm not going to put it in L, because, it was definitely nice to, I don't know, he was something. He was better than Bastion Booger. He was better than Johnny B. Bad. Better than what he became later on down the road as Curly Bill. They could have done him better. They could have done more with him. So it goes in nah. Next up, Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Hup! What was his gimmick? Fucking carpenter. I don't remember him ever explaining why he carried that 2x4. He's a patriotic guy. Anytime And you get guys like Hulk Hogan, it was like a real American, or characters like the Patriot or whatever. Anybody who was like very pro-America. I remember Hacksaw Jim Duggan, he feuded with Sergeant Slaughter when they made him heel, and he was like supporting Iraq and that, and Iron Sheik and whatever, all the fucking, you know, people that were pro-Middle East. And Hacksaw was always pro-American, pro-red, white, and blue, the yellow ribbons, the fucking blah, 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 blah. Right? And, yeah, he was a quirky guy. He was fun. Big, strong dude. Started his career as a heel, if I'm not mistaken. And, you know, he put that 2x4 to use every once in a while. He had a football tackle for a finishing move. He was all right. But that's about all I can say. He was all right. I like him. He's fun. Always fun. But he's going to W. Finally, somebody takes a win. Just a win. No higher, no lower. Talking Hacksaw Jim Duggan, that's a win. All right, Nasty Boys. See title for fucking description. I don't know. They're fucking nasty. I don't know. One of their fucking moves was rubbing their armpit in your face. And they had like really gross physiques. They looked like they stunk. At some point in their life, they got into a fucking 2-on-1 fight with Ken Shamrock and like beat him over the head with a telephone or something. One of them, Knobs, is like good buddies with Hulk's fucking Hogan. Never gave a fuck about the Nasty Boys, I'll be honest. You know, I don't know, where did they start? WCW? I didn't become familiar with them until WWF. They feuded with the Legion of Doom. They feuded with Demolition. They feuded with the Bushwhackers. They feuded with any tag team at the time. And I never really gave much of a fuck about the Nasty Boys. And, you know, they were very much a product of their time. I mean, just look at them. They were very much a product of the early 90s and never really managed to find their footing beyond that. So, and because we're like approaching an hour into this damn video, and man, I just, you know, I could talk all day, but I'd rather not like make a fucking 2-hour video. Okay, so whatever. Nasty Boys, nah. Isaac Yankum, DDS, Glenn Jacobs. He is no stranger to this series. We already had reviewed his character, Kane, which everyone is surely familiar with. But before there was Kane, there was Isaac Yankum. There was Isaac Yankum, the Christmas Creature, Fake Diesel. He's got a lot on his resume, but Kane, obviously, the most popular, most successful. But I would say second to that would have to be Dr. Isaac Yankum, DDS. This is garbage. This is fucking trash gimmick. Alright? You're a fucking dentist with bad teeth and you're scary looking. Whatever. It's... I mean... You know, here's the thing. I mean, we got like Barry Darso as the Repo Man. Dump the Dukester Brosi. Duke the Dumpster Brosi. Yeah, Sparky Plug. There are plenty of shitheel gimmicks to go around, okay? And they all deserve to be in a toilet. But every once in a while, you get a Disco Inferno. Right? Every once in a while, you get a Hurricane superhero, right? Like, you get those corny gimmicks that just fucking work. And I think that's just a matter of, you know, the gimmick can work if you give it to the right guy. Maybe... No. I was going to say maybe somebody else could have done more with Isaac Yankum, but I doubt it. You know, the only way that was ever going anywhere was with a guy as big and intimidating as Kane, and even he couldn't fucking do it. That fucking character is... it's fucking ass blast, but... No, it is ass blast. It's fucking ass blast. I was going to say, you know, because I like Glenn Jacobs, you know what? No, I'm not letting my bias get in the way anymore. Fucking dentist is ass blast. All right, Ravishing Rick Rude. Ravishing Rick Rude. We all know Ravishing Rick Rude. He's fucking ravishing. Dude, fucking go back to, when did he debut? Sometime in the mid-'80s, right? Like, go back to like 1985. Look at that motherfucker. Right? Just look at him. And then look at him right before he died. That dude was 40 years old for like 20 years of his career. Dude always looked fucking... he looked fucking like a man. I guarantee you that dude, when that guy came out of his mother's womb, He had fucking crow's feet and like a square jaw and like 5 o'clock shadow. I guarantee it. That motherfucker always looked like this fucking chiseled, fucking roided version of Tom Selleck. And his whole gimmick was he was like a Chippendales guy, and he thought he was like super sick. He had like chicken legs, but he was shredded to the bone. Definitely, you know, behind the scenes, very, very renowned, very, very notorious for being like, again, one of these guys you don't fuck with. He will beat the fuck out of you, right? Like everyone on the other side of Haku, Ravishing Rick Rude was going to kick the shit out of if you got in his way. And if I'm being honest, I think, like, you know, he wouldn't even really be afraid of Haku. You know, he's one of those kind of guys. I think he beat the shit out of the Warrior backstage a couple times or something, if I'm not mistaken. But that's neither here nor there. We're talking about the gimmick. How did that gimmick work? It worked for him. It definitely worked for him. And again, we're going back to that period in the mid-late 80s. Yeah, it worked. It worked. It worked. Mustache, man. Dude always looked 40. I don't know how you pull that off. You know? Dude looked 20 years older than he was when he debuted and 20 years younger than he was before he fucking died or whatever the fuck. I don't know. Or looked his age, I guess. Whatever. Ravishing Rick Rude's badass. Next up, Pale Imitation time. And final on the list, Val Venus. Very similar kind of thing. He was a porn star, though. They went a little more on the nose with it. You know, Ravishing Rick Rude alluded to him being like, you know, having a giant hog and wanting to throw it in every bitch that was in the front row, right? Val Venus didn't make any fucking secret about it. He was a fucking porn star. And I remember, you know, his intro video on the Titantron was like hot dogs getting laid into the buns and shit. And which kind of made me laugh. It was pretty funny. Hello, ladies. But he was a shit fucking imitation of fucking Ravishing Rick Rude, in my opinion. Okay? Dude had a good physique. He was a good worker. Decent on the mic. Decent enough. It fit in with that Attitude Era, right? They're trying to push the envelope. The Godfather and the Hoe Train. Suck it. Everything's fucking a bunch of degenerates running around, and Val Venus fucking fit right in with that. Does he belong in the same conversation as Ravishing Rick Rude? Fuck no, he doesn't, but at the same time, he's not, he's not ass blast like Chief Morley or the, you know, whatever the fuck, you know, prude characters he played after Val Venus to kind of counteract that character or whatever, come out the other side of it. But we'll put, Val Venus goes in to win. And anyway, this video's gone on long enough. Okay, we're hitting over the hour mark now. That's about where I want to cut these off. So, sorry for cutting it off so abruptly, but I think we got it all out of the way. We got 20 superstars out there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for staying with me to the end. If you haven't liked and subscribed and all that bullshit, do it, fucking whatever. I want to say I don't give a shit, because I would appreciate the subscription and the sharing of the video and that, but yeah, I shouldn't have to tell you that. But anyway, here's looking forward to part 5. We'll see you then.